Welcome to You Make the Difference. I'm Wanda Walker, and I have as my guest today Chris Patton. Chris is with Mike Patton Auto, and in fact, he's the son of Mike Patton.
That's right.
And Mike Patton has been in the community for a long, long time and has been a blessing to our community. Chris, just start off by telling us about your family and how y'all got started in the car business.
Well, my grandfather was in the business back in, started in South Carolina in '63, and my father brought our family to LaGrange in '73 with a Volkswagen store. So in fact, this past March we celebrated 40 years in LaGrange. We're excited about that. I've got two younger brothers. I'm the oldest of the three, and all three of us are in the business. We are third generation. Statistically, we're the ones that are supposed to take the business down, but we're hoping that doesn't happen. So it's a great family business, and we just love it.
Yes, and your business is unique in that you have brought a Christian perspective into your business, and even write about that perspective that you have. And you started a blog about 10 years ago. Tell us.
2 years ago.
2 years
Yes.
ago. Okay.
Yeah.
And
well,
well,
I can't
knew,
imagine 10 years.
Yeah. Well, I thought you said 10 on the phone call, but and I wasn't aware of it for 10 years. I know, but it's called Christian Faith at Work.
Correct.
And tell us how that got started.
Well, it actually started as a hobby. My wife told me I needed one. Said that I needed something to do to take my mind off of work, and so I started trying to figure out how to do that. Didn't really know what I would write about until I started thinking, what do I know the most about? It's business and trying to implement Christian faith in the workplace, and that's what we've been trying to do for 10 years.
Yes.
So the implementation of the faith in the workplace, we've been trying on a more proactive basis, I guess, for 10 years. My father operated the business on Christian principles the entire 40 years, his father before that. So all we've really done is try to be a little bit more proactive about it. But so I started writing that about 2 years ago, and had to teach myself how to design a website and do all that. And there are a lot of tools online to do that. But really started out thinking it'd just be me and the screen.
Yes.
And over the last 2 years, it's kind of blossomed some. We've got people kind of all over. I've got about 2,000 subscribers at this point. Had one interesting comment come from a small pastor of a small church that said he'd never heard of Christian faith in the workplace and doing business as ministry, and wanted to know if I'd teach his church about that topic. And I thought, I don't know if I'm qualified, but I'll certainly try. Where's the church? And he said, Chandigarh, India.
Wow.
So I was taken aback. This is online interaction, and I said, well, I don't have any plans to be in India anytime soon. His name is Rajiv, and he said, but you do Skype, right? So we Skyped. We've done 3 conferences so far. He's had anywhere from 12 to 15 up to 25 people in the audience sitting on a concrete floor in his home church. He uses a camera and Skype on the internet, and I'm sitting in my office in LaGrange, Georgia, 8 hours behind, teaching them about Christian business and how God owns the business and how He wants to use it for an eternal impact.
And so you have to have an interpreter to do that, right?
Well, he's actually the interpreter.
Okay.
That's the cool thing. I will speak a sentence or two in English, and I give him my notes ahead of time, and then so he hears me, and then he speaks it while I pause, and then I go back, and we're back and forth. I do about an hour and a half of material, and he does his translation, so it takes us about 3 hours to get through it.
Wow, and they're eager to hear it.
They are hungry. At one point, Wanda, I asked if they needed a bathroom break after an hour, and he said, no, you go ahead and take one, we'll wait. I thought, wow. So we just kept on going.
Yeah.
But they are very hungry.
Yeah, and tell us how you've incorporated Christian principles into the workplace. What does that look like?
Wow. Well, when I first started really trying to push it back in '03, I didn't really know what that looked like. I had a lot of brainstorm ideas, thoughts. One early idea that we do have in place now is a chaplain. So we have a corporate chaplain that comes through 2 days a week and spends 2 days with us and goes through to every employee, just building relationships and a confidential source for someone to talk to. And he also goes hospital visits and does midnight phone calls, and he's available 24/7, 365 based on a pager. And that's been phenomenal. So that's one way.
Who is your chaplain?
His name is Mike Fortenberry. He's with Corporate Chaplains of America. So
Uh-huh.
his full-time job is being a chaplain to businesses.
Wow.
And we're one of the businesses. There's another one here in town, Lyle Daniels' company, Benchmark Contracting.
Yes.
They use him. Conaway Electric uses him. So he spends probably 3 or 4 days a week here in LaGrange ministering to those businesses the same way.
Huh.
Yeah.
I'd never heard of that.
Yeah.
Okay, and so what else does it entail?
Well, one of the things he does while he's here on Thursdays and Fridays, he does a lunch Bible study and a breakfast Bible study, and does a video series, maybe an Andy Stanley series or something online, or he may come up with a book, and they do go through a book on, the last book we did was how to be, kind of teaching the employees how to be chaplains in their community,
Huh.
whether it's at home, school, at work, and trying to multiply that mindset and get it out into the business. But he does that. We provide the food for the lunch and breakfast. That's every week. We also put New Testament Bibles called Owner's Manual for Life.
Yes.
And we put those in the glove box of every car we sell. We have open every meeting with prayer. We give a percentage of our profit goes directly to ministry activities and support local ministries, like we've talked about Emmaus House
Yes.
here locally, Camp Windshape with Chick-fil-A. So things like that, certainly. And a lot of little things happen. We've got an impact fund where employees actually contribute to a fund that turns around, and the money is only used to help employees in crisis situations. So it's a confidential thing, but they contribute out of their check, and then when somebody hits a crisis, we're able to help out of an employee fund, and that's something they wanted. So
Yeah.
really
Oh,
cool.
that's really great. And it always is so nice to have the support of people you work with when you do
Right.
hit a crisis.
Absolutely.
Yes. Now, tell us a little bit more about the Windshape camp and how y'all are involved and how that's enriched your relationships with the owners of Chick-fil-A.
Yeah. It was a couple years ago, and I may get the order of events wrong, but basically my understanding was from Pastor Greg Brown at Western Heights that he had met with Chick-fil-A and they wanted to do Windshape day camp in LaGrange, but they wanted to do it a different way. Instead of the typical 300 kids basically coming out of the church that was hosting it, they wanted to have 1/2 of the number of kids be scholarship,
Yes.
people that could not otherwise afford it. And so he was trying to raise the money to fund that. And we saw that as a perfect match. We'd love anytime we can be partnered with Chick-fil-A with their Christian values and the way they run their business. It certainly lifts our reputation up. And then to help the kids, 150 kids that couldn't otherwise go to camp. So we sponsored a 5K road race
Yes.
here in LaGrange. We've done that for 2 years now. And we're able to put a significant amount of money toward that scholarship fund and help 150 kids the first year, and I think it was over 200 kids the second year to go through that camp that otherwise could not have.
Yes, and I talked to Josh Sales and Rob Bowman, and they were so appreciative of how you joined their effort. And
Well, they do a great job.
They do. And also, when you connect with other Christian businessmen, there's a trust that's developed
Oh, sure.
very quickly, and you can enter into things and produce something together because of knowing each other's motives and knowing each
Right.
other's hearts. And so, that's just an added benefit of having Christian
Well,
principles.
And you learn from them
So-
too. I mean,
yes.
I've learned quite a bit from Josh and Rob, and just the interaction there. And then we did Chick-fil-A LeaderCast
Yes.
for the first time this past May, and hope to do that on an annual basis. So trying to bring some of that learning that we're getting from each other into the community, and hopefully build up this community to be thinking the same way.
Yes. Now, in 2001, you hired Tim Wilson.
Yes.
And Tim is your.
He's the controller
That's
at the
what
dealership.
that's what I was thinking.
Head bean counter.
Yes. And so he had an interesting thing to propose to you
Oh,
during
wow.
the interview, didn't
Yeah, he came in the interview, and he had been in Atlanta for the past 25 years in a big store. And the interview went well, but at the end he said, I want to make sure of one thing. I want to make sure I can disciple employees and that you don't have an issue with that. And I said, based on my mindset right now, I would welcome it. Tell me what you mean. And the short of it is, his church, Crossroads Church in Noonan, Pastor Ken Adams had written a discipleship program called Impact, small group discipleship, weekly meetings. And so Tim took myself and a couple other guys through it that first time. And within a year or two, we had a couple of hundred people in LaGrange in various churches going through that same discipleship study.
Yes.
Because the three of us went and got groups, and then they went and got groups, and it just multiplied quickly. And I still run into people, it's literally been 12 years later, that say that changed my life. And
Yes.
it certainly changed mine in a big way.
Yes, and I ended up taking the Impact Bible studies
Great.
too, and I was very encouraged by those studies about how you can just take those studies anywhere.
Oh, yeah.
Into like an apartment complex, of course in the church, but I mean with your friends, anywhere. They could go anywhere. And then the other thing that I was impressed with was, if you do take those groups, say you took a group of 12 and everybody committed after that Bible study to teach 12 more. You know, that's 144.
Just like that.
It multiplies so quickly that I multiplied it out, and I can't remember the exact figures, but in 5 years it was over 200 and something thousand people that you could reach, which is way more than we have in our county.
Exactly.
And so, you know, it teaches in there how Jesus taught with multiplication.
That was his plan.
Yeah, that was his plan, and so we need to pick that plan up and move with it.
Exactly.
Because with that multiplication, it went all over the world at that present time, and then it has gone into the generations forever. You know, I mean, it just
That's why we have it.
Yeah, that's why we have it, and it keeps moving.
Yeah.
And it teaches us about the life of Christ, and that we are to be disciples. And so it is a remarkable Bible study, and I was real encouraged that it went in the churches. And you know, even Ken Adams considered having a satellite here.
Exactly.
And so, you know, who knows what'll come of that even now.
Well, I can tell you, I can attribute the last 10 or 12 years of my focus on faith in the workplace to that study. Not that study alone, but that was a huge eye-opener for me in showing me that my responsibility, even though I may not feel I'm a preacher, I need to be multiplying disciples in whatever way that looks. And for me, it's by running a business.
Yes. And so one of the things I would like for you to talk about is, how has having Christian faith in the workplace strengthened your family?
Wow. Well, first of all, I think when I recognized that it was God's business, that He owned the business, that the purpose of the business was not to provide a comfortable lifestyle for me and my family, that although it may do that as a result, that was not the goal.
Yes.
And the goal for me that I felt like God had put on my heart was to impact people for eternity. So when you take just me personally, take my focus off of the fact that I need to maximize profit for the sake of profit.
Yes.
You relieve a lot of stress, because when things happen that cost you money, or your profit is not what you thought it should be, even though, yes, I've got to run an excellent business, and that's something that I believe God has called us to a higher standard in that way, the loss of money is not a loss of security. And therefore my stress level goes down, and I can understand and see it from a 1,000-year picture instead of a 30, 60, 90-day window. And when that happens, my family life is dramatically changed. Now, there are still stresses. I've got 3 teenagers.
Yes.
I love them to death, but that is not the easiest time to be in for them or us. But as a family, not just for my immediate, but for Brian and David, my brothers, and my dad, to know that every decision we make, even though we mess them up, the goal is to make the right choice, to honor God in what we do. It leaves a lot that we don't have to worry about.
Yes.
You know, you don't have to worry, what did I tell them to negotiate this, or what did I tell so-and-so to make this happen? We're just going to do it to the best of our ability the way God would have us do it, and He can take care of the results.
What is the first thing that you did to implement the eternal perspective? And tell me like how you felt when you were stepping out, doing that, not being sure how it would be received or those kinds of things.
Oh yeah, that's a good one. The very first thing I did, that we did as a company, is we went to the one price model.
Yes.
And the drive for that came out of Proverbs, where God said He hates unequal weights and measures. So we took it to where the pricing on our product is based on the product, not on the customer's ability to negotiate it or to understand the costing or their education or anything. So when we went to that, I thought, everybody's going to love this. No more beating each other up, no more negotiating.
Yes.
And I found I was wrong. At least in the beginning, it was a challenge. We lost a large number of employees. We lost some customers because they felt it was that we were being stubborn rather than pre-discounting, and it just wasn't explained well. So the first 18 months literally was very difficult.
Yes.
We had to learn how to operate with this mindset. And after that, we finally got some of the right people in place, and I got some help because I didn't know how to do it. It really has been a blessing, and now we've got people that they would not have it any other way. Customers that rave about it because they can come in, get a good, fair price.
Yes.
No messing around, no games, and they love it.
Yes.
But that first 18 months was tough, and because maybe my expectations were that everybody would just love it and respond, when actually it was not the case. So looking back, I would have done some things differently in how I implemented and gotten more help. We would have changed some things in the way we did it, but not the choice itself. We would not go back.
Yes. Well, I particularly appreciate it because I tried to buy a car. I wasn't very good at that dickering process.
Me either.
I didn't understand it, and sometimes, I finally thought I had bought a car one time and then went to pick it up and it was gone. And so, I just thought, oh my gosh, I don't even know how to buy a car. But, going in like you go into a store and you know the price, I love that.
Exactly.
Because I know whether I can pay for it, and
That's
I
right.
know, if I can look at my budget and set that up and those kinds of things, and I feel confident going in and saying I want that car for $8,000 or
Yep.
whatever. But I feel much more comfortable with that. And I remember like Flywheel.
Yes.
And when you saw that movie, how did that speak to you?
Well, I saw that movie toward the end of that 18 months, and I could see the light coming at the end of the tunnel.
Yes.
I knew we were almost out of the worst of it, and somebody said, "You ought to watch this movie Flywheel. It's not real professional, but you'll love it." And I ordered it, got it through Amazon, and watched it that next night. And I sat on my couch at home, and I just cried.
Yeah.
And just be honest, it was a moving experience. It was exactly, in theory and in the intent, what I had gone through.
Yes.
Some of the ways things happened in the movie was not exactly the same, but just the whole shift of the mindset was so parallel to what we had done and the experience we had gone through and some of the challenges we had faced. It was very moving for me.
Yes. Yes. And I know there have been other businesses who have come to you to find out how you have changed so that you have the eternal perspective. Tell me about that.
Well, some have come through the blog.
Uh-huh.
For example, a couple I can think of. One that came is a pharmacist and owns a wellness health store in Alabama, North Alabama. Read the blog, said, would love to come and pick your brain. I go to Auburn football games a lot. Can I come by and just buy your lunch? And so he and I have got a friendship now and interact every once in a while. But he came in, we sat for a couple hours and had lunch, and he just picked my brain. How do you get started? Where do you learn about it? What do you do when this happens? And asking many of the questions I would have asked somebody 10 years ago.
Yes.
And I know he's implementing. I've seen some of that. had a local individual that worked in a bank that came to me and said, listen, I thought until I found this blog that I was just in a position that had to be business only, and now I realize I can use some of the gifts God's given me to impact people in my sphere at work, and we maintain communication. Then we had a Christian car dealer conference, if you can believe that, and there were more than 2 or 3 of us there.
Good.
In Charlotte, North Carolina. Had it at the Speedway. It was a group of business people up in that area that actually initiated the conference, and I was fortunate enough to be involved because of the blog. They had seen that and wanted me to do one of the workshop presentations. So I got to meet 8 or 10 dealers or vendors in the car business that I've maintained relationship with since, that are either they're picking my brain or I'm picking theirs. Because as long as we've been doing it 10, 12 years, I've probably got 3 years of experience 4 times because I keep repeating some of the same mistakes. But learning from people like that is part of what keeps me going, and making sure that our family is making the right decisions as we move the business forward.
Yes.
It's been really good.
Now, what is some of the first advice that you give business owners who come to you about how do we start this? What do you say?
That's a good question.
Yes.
First and foremost, I would tell them without a doubt they need to pray, and not just light prayer, but they need to put a dedicated effort toward praying that with an open mind and open heart, no preconceived notion of what they need to do, but allow God to put the passion, the fire in their heart for something. If it is business as ministry, once He puts that fire in their heart, then He will absolutely add the fuel to it that He needs, and they will be much more passionate about what they're doing in the long term, because there is opposition. There is absolutely opposition, spiritual and otherwise, and they need to have that behind them. So the prayer is the first thing. I would recommend what I read out of, I think it was Larry Burkett's book, Business by the Book, where he said go to Proverbs and read it with your business glasses on. Read Proverbs as a business manual.
Yes.
Had never thought about that.
Yeah.
Once I started, literally, chapter 1 in Proverbs is what started me on the path toward the one price model, and reading how that is portrayed, even though it wasn't a car deal going bad in that chapter, it was certainly the material that opened my eyes, and God used Proverbs in a big way as a business manual to help. Then I would suggest getting online, studying as much as you can, because there's plenty of material out there. You mentioned Oz Hillman and some of his material.
Yes. There's
gobs of it out online. I would suggest joining a group. I'm in a group called C12 that's kind of like an advisory board that I meet with monthly, 1 day a month, full day. We go to Atlanta and meet, and we go over Christian business material. We have devotion. We do accountability questions and discussion, and just bouncing ideas off of them, because I'm just not going to come up with them myself. I'm not a creative person. I'm a lift and shift. I find somebody that's doing it right, I copy them, and I put it in place where I am with maybe some modifications. But they definitely would need to reach out to some people and try to get some help that way. Some of the things I didn't even realize were available when I first started in '03.
Now the C12, who's behind C12?
It's a gentleman named Buck Jacobs founded it. I want to say 96, 97, somewhere in there. Owned a chemical business. He and his partner were Christians, ran it as a ministry, a real business, but for the purpose of ministry for 20 years. And when he sold the business and retired, started trying to figure out what he was going to do, figured out he really couldn't stop doing business, and he founded this company and started with just a group of 12 local business people in Tampa, Florida.
Yes.
He's gifted at writing material, so he started writing material. They met for 1 day a month, and it just kind of blossomed from there. So now I think they're in 20 states or so, and it's a franchise set up. So the guy that moderates our group has 2 or 3 groups around the Atlanta area, and it's not car specific. It is just business from an ownership perspective and a Christian worldview, doing it as a ministry. And so we get to cry together and talk about the challenges, but also celebrate some things as well.
And learn from one another.
Oh my goodness.
Yes, and I want you to tell some stories. Tell me a story maybe about one of your employees who has benefited from the way you do business.
Let's see, that's a good one. And part of my challenge there is making sure I'm not
Yes.
being too specific. We've had a number of situations. I'll name. Well, we've certainly had a family that benefited, even though it was a pretty tragic situation. We had a sales manager. This has been about 3 years ago. Young, mid-40s, doing a phenomenal job with us, and just suddenly had a heart attack on the showroom floor, and passed away right there.
Yes.
We had 40 or 50 employees coming together in that showroom, watching it happen.
Uh-huh.
I can still remember that like it was yesterday.
Yes.
We got together and prayed off to the side while the paramedics were doing their work. The chaplain I called, and he said he would be there in a few minutes. He left his current place and came in, started ministering to employees. The family of the employee that passed away, I met with at the hospital. Unfortunately, I was one that had to tell the mother what had happened, and the wife. And we did a memorial service for that family, for the employees, to get some closure. So the family came in, and I've gotten comments for months and even years after that about how big of an impact that had, not only on the family members, but the people that worked around that employee,
Yes.
and just the way that ministered to them as well as the family. We had another young employee a year prior to that committed suicide. Had a similar memorial service for him, ministered to his family. They ministered to us in some ways as
Yes.
well. The chaplain was key there, and I don't know, I could go on and on about different ways they've been impacted, but I've had several come to me after leaving the company for various reasons and saying, what y'all taught, the one Bible study that you mentioned this or you did this, changed my life.
Yes.
And just little things like that. I wouldn't trade anything for that.
Yes. Well, I just want to say that I appreciate who you are in the community, and I appreciate Mike Patton.
Me too.
Yeah, really. And I just appreciate the influence that it is in the community. And every Christmas, I appreciate going by and seeing the Merry Christmas signs. And I just encourage you to support Mike Patton Auto. And
I would ditto that.
yeah, ditto that. And I also encourage you to be who you are in Christ in the workplace, for it truly makes a difference. Thank you for watching.
Got a promise from heaven. It's a year of replevin. Got a promise from heaven. It's all coming.